Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Icarus and today I wanted to go over periods. I realize this is Saturday, not Friday. I fucked up on my medication. I'm okay now. I'm back on the right schedule. But this was important to me because I saw on Am I the Asshole last week a guy who thought he was okay with periods who got really grossed out when there was a little spot of blood because his girlfriend she thought that she was okay and she was not. She had a little bit of an accident and he destroyed his relationship before he realized how much of an idiot he was. I feel like talking about periods, destigmatizing them, that will help a lot with people understanding what is going on. And before I continue, a disclaimer. This is a very generalized look at it. This is not speaking specifically about stuff that can happen with periods that are actually debilitating. I'm going with the most general, and as we move forward in the series, I may end up going into more specifics about PCOS or endomitosis, that sort of thing. And I also want to add a second disclaimer of when you're a teenager or you're going through your second puberty because you're trans and you didn't get a transition until you're older or anything like that, you're absolutely allowed to be hormonal, grumpy, whatever. Being a teenager especially is hard, and no one should expect you to have everything figured out. Going through second puberty is also hell, but you also still need to take accountability for your actions. Once you start figuring out your body, you should be sure to plan for these. I realized, especially in places like the US, it's not very easy to say, take 2 or 3 days off of work because your period literally forces you to stop doing anything. I know when I was in high school, my periods got to a point where in physics class, I would just lay my head down and cry because I could not handle the light. But it doesn't excuse you from being an asshole for the rest of the time either. Testosterone does not make you more violent. Estrogen does not make you more weepy. Those are myths, and without any further hedging, let's get into it. Starting with, what is a period? It is essentially just your body, if you have a uterus, wants to prepare itself to have a baby. It doesn't want a zygote to be formed and then be like, oh shit, we gotta throw everything together. So it prepares everything in advance. And as the lining hits the end of its shelf life, it's like, okay, time to throw it all out, and it purges it, and that's why you have a period. It is just that uterine lining coming out, and it sucks. Let's be real. Periods are the fucking worst. They're messy, they're gross, you end up cramping, you feel bloated, you may feel hungry, headaches, light sensitivity, the whole 9 yards. And you get some symptoms, not other symptoms. Sometimes it comes and goes. Sometimes it gets worse. Sometimes it gets better. Sometimes you find out that you have something more severe. So your periods are genuinely worse than anyone else's because it's not a regular period. And doctors don't take you seriously. It is tough. What's even worse is when people don't understand things around you and they don't take you seriously, or you don't understand what's going on yourself. So I want to give some notes that I learned over the years, as well as some things that I looked up, and I'll give my links in my resources in the description as well, so you can read into it at your own pace. And I really would suggest anyone who doesn't have a uterus, anyone who doesn't have periods, please watch. Even if you are in the most uterus-free having experiences ever, you're going to be around someone with the uterus who suddenly has a surprise period, and you may want to know how to handle it, because periods suck. I have heard even trans women who take estrogen can sometimes develop period-like symptoms, and they are terrible. I'm sorry that you have to deal with that. So, first, you need to know how to track your cycle. And this isn't always a guarantee, but most people end up settling into a routine where they will have their period between 28 and 35 days. The way you calculate it, and I was not taught this, I was taught to track my period, but not how, is You start counting from the day of your first period to the day of the first day of your next period. And like I said, it takes some time to even out. When you're just hitting puberty for the first time, it is very likely that it's not going to fit that cycle immediately. It's also likely that while most periods tend to last between 3 to 7 days, when you're just starting out, it will be a little bit longer. And it may be a little more sporadic. Best thing to do, keep whatever you want to use to control the blood with you. If you're going to school, you can get one of those little pencil pouches, but pads, tampons, set of period panties, whatever you're using. And we'll go over a couple options later. No one can see it, no one can judge you. Most teachers should be totally fine letting you go to handle it because, let's be real, in the US especially, there is a disproportionate amount of uterus havers in educational roles for students, primary education especially. And if they don't let you, go anyway. And if they try to call you out on it, go to the principal, go to your parents, look to the adults in your life, because somebody in your life has a uterus and understands, and they should stick up for you. No one really stuck up for me. I didn't stand up for myself, and I feel like I would have been a lot happier if I had gone and taken care of things instead of sitting and letting myself bleed through my pants. Another good thing to be aware of is what the blood looks like, because especially when you're just starting out, it can be really scary. You can see really dark brownish red blood, or it can be black and you're like, oh my god, am I dying? You're not. I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I went through a lot of this too. But I'll go through some of the different colors of blood and explain what they can be and what other symptoms to go in conjunction with the blood to worry about. Starting with black. A really big thing with blood is it starts out bright red. I mean, you skinned your knee, you've had a bug bite, you are familiar with this. It starts out bright red, and then as it interacts with oxygen, it oxidizes, just like rust. And what happens is it will start to turn a darker and darker red to black. When it's black, and it's black at the start of your period, that's just old blood making its way out. If it's black at the very end of your period, that's old blood making its way out. The only time you need to really worry about having black blood is if you are experiencing other stuff, like you can't pee, or you are having issues like extreme pain, or really weird discharge on non-period days, that sort of thing. You will know if something's wrong with your vagina, because black blood can also be a sign of blockage. The inability to pee, most understandable. Unlike a popular myth, you do not pee from your vagina. There is a separate hole between your vagina and your clit, and you pee from that. But you have to remember, your body is a series of tubes, and these tubes are very close to each other, so if something is blocking your vagina, it is pressing against the bladder tube, and it's going to make it difficult to pee. So black blood, not something to worry about. It's just really old blood finally making its way out, unless you have something else going on. Now, dark brown blood, it's just blood that hasn't been sticking around as long as black blood. It can be, if it's spotted, a sign of pregnancy. If we're not going to go over pregnancy today, we're just going to assume you're regularly having periods, you're being safe if you're having sex, or you're not fucking at all. What it is just older blood. It can usually signal the end of the period, because it's like the last remnants leaving, that sort of thing. Or it can signal the start of the period, because it's the old blood getting pushed out before all the gushy red stuff comes out. And that's the next color, red. Typical flow, nothing to worry about. You'll sometimes feel like you have little clumps and stuff coming out. It's just blood. The blood from your vagina and from your uterus is just as sterile as any other blood coming from you. Meaning, so long as you don't have any diseases that can be contaminated through bodily fluids, you're fine. It's really nothing to stress about. Pink. Pink can be seen at the very start of a period, like as a warning sign, or spotting if you're on hormonal birth control, like the pill or an IUD that is hormonal. What pink is, it is just a little bit of blood mixed with cervical fluid. If you have a vaginal tear, you may see that sort of thing too. really, it's nothing to worry about. The only other times that you would have to worry about it is if you are already malnourished, have a very unhealthy diet, that sort of thing, and you see pink spotting. It's also very common for people with uteruses who are extremely malnourished to not have periods because your body's locking down into survival mode. And if you are in survival mode, you also just can't afford to share energy in having a baby or making a uterine lining, so your body's just like shutting that down. It's not a priority. It can also sometimes appear orange, so it's just cervical fluid, blood, same thing, same issues. Last one is gray. If it's gray, you do have a problem. You have a bacterial imbalance in your vagina. Your entire body's covered in bacteria. A lot of it is very healthy, very helpful. And if it's gray, I would speak with an adult or your doctor. Just figure out what's going on and get that balance back in order. And usually, you'll be itchy, swollen, gross discharge even before the period happened. Now for the next bit. What sort of things can you use to help control the blood? Because it's bodily fluid, and we can't just free bleed and let it stay in the back of our pants. So, I want to go through a couple of different options. There's a lot more options out there, but these are the most common ones that I know of. Starting with pads. Pads look like a piece of a diaper that has been cut out specifically to put on your underwear. If you are, say, a trans man and you wear boxer briefs, these work very well with them. That is actually why I've chosen to wear boxer briefs for a very long time, because boxers a little too loose, I couldn't put the pad on. And I personally have issues with vaginal penetration, so I wasn't about to use any of the insertable things. But pads, they are typically a long piece of absorbent cloth that some of them have wings, some of them don't. They come in different levels of protection. So if you are someone who has, say, a very heavy flow for several days, you may want to get something that says it's better to hold more. If you have a lighter flow, you can get some of the thinner stuff. There's even panty liners that you can use, say, in conjunction with a tampon if you're worried about bleeding through. The biggest thing with pads is you want to make sure they're positioned about where you think you're going to be before you can replace it. So if you're sitting a lot, like you are in class or you work an office job, you will want to position it a little further back. Basically, kind of pay attention to where your underwear sits on you when you're sitting down, and then position the pad where that goes. And if you're standing up, it's going to be a little more forward. If you are sleeping overnight and you are wearing a pad or a panty liner, you'll want to push it a little further back. Though typically at night, you will have a lighter flow overall because your body's horizontal. Most of what's happening, besides the cramping, because that's a whole other thing, is your body is pushing it all down through gravity. It's not like the esophagus. You cannot, or you can swallow when you are upside down. Your vagina cannot push the blood out when you're upside down or flat. That does tend to mean that in the start of the morning, once you are up and moving around, you may experience a heavier discharge at the start and then have to be prepared to go on from there. Just something to be aware of. A lot of people don't like pads. Again, I ascribe them to diapers for a reason. They do make cotton reusable ones. They are a little more expensive up front, but they feel less diapery and they're better for the environment. So you could get yourself a handful of them, and they make ones with wings. They make ones that like can snap together so they stay in place, that sort of thing. They're really cool. You can get patterned ones. I love them. I wish I had known about it before I started testosterone and my period actually stopped. That's not a universal truth. Some people on testosterone will continue to have periods for a while, and you may want, if your periods make you dysphoric, you may want to look into options of like medically ending them, be it like surgery or some sort of birth control. Obviously the hormonal ones are out, etc. Talk with your doctor about it. Moving on, like I said, cotton ones are a good choice, but if you're someone who doesn't mind the vaginal penetration, tampons are one of the next most popular choices. You can use them while you're active. They typically have a string on them, making them easy to pull out. They have cardboard and plastic inserters, so you can be a little more conscientious about the environment if you want. They are essentially like a cotton tube that goes into your vagina, and the blood will collect there, and then you pull it out, wrap it in toilet paper, do not flush it, do not flush pads, and dispose of it. And then you insert another one. Drawbacks on these typically are you can only wear them about 4 to 6 hours, sometimes less depending on how heavy of a flow you are. And it's not recommended to go over 8 to 10 hours because then you can develop toxic shock syndrome. So you don't wear these overnight. I would really suggest a pad or a panty liner or one of the future options overnight. And sometimes it can be a little more difficult to, like if you are in high school, for instance, it can be a little more difficult to go as often as you need to replace them. So sometimes you can get away with wearing them a little bit longer. I really wouldn't recommend it. An alternative to the tampon is a Monstro Cup. What this is it's my favorite friend, medical grade silicone, and it is a little cup that you fold up and you insert it just like a tampon, and it collects the blood. You can then dump the blood into the toilet, rinse it off in the sink, and reuse it. I like it because it's not a risk for toxic shock syndrome, and you can, in between uses, actually boil them. A lot of people get freaked out about the idea of you boiling your cup in hot water or putting it in the dishwasher with non-toxic detergent, of course. So you may want to get a little pot just for it. Some of the drawbacks on these include such a thing as if you're squeamish about blood or you're squeamish about the penetration, you're dealing with blood. You're handling it, you're going to have to wash your hands. It may not be for you. You may want to go with the disposable tampons or the pads because, in my experience, pads tend to be the least messy option so far as dealing with blood. The disposable ones, not the cotton ones, because then you're having to wash them, that sort of thing. And the very last option I want to talk about is a thing that I had never heard before until like a year ago. They're called period panties. And what these are is they're underwear that are specially designed to kind of let you free bleed into them. Free bleeding being you don't have anything on. But these period panties are thicker, so they can absorb the blood, and they are more expensive. They are good if you have a lighter flow, not so good if you have a heavy flow. Though you could combine this with a pad of some sort if you wanted to, or a cup. And you have to have several pairs to make sure you're going throughout your entire period. Like I said, average length of a period, 3 to 7 days. Sometimes a little shorter, sometimes a little longer. Your body will figure it out. And that's really most of everything. Like I said, I'm someone who personally had extremely painful periods. They made me very heavily dysphoric. And I was very happy when I started testosterone and like a couple months later, my period stopped. The last few things I can say is if you are getting your COVID vaccine, there has been noticeable changes with people's periods. They may suddenly experience a heavier flow after their shot. I personally experienced having a period after my second shot, which was terrifying because I thought something was happening to my body and it decided it didn't want to have periods again. And really, all I can say is understanding that periods are just another part of life and they're going to vary in terms of pain tolerance, in terms of side effects, in terms of if it's actually a problem or if it just sucks because you're having a period. Talking to people that are around you, talking to your doctor, talking to another person with a period. Hell, if you are confused or you have questions, you can ask me. I am more than willing to put the research in for you and try and help you figure out what you can say to your doctor to be taken seriously, because I have seen people on Tumblr growing up just going years and years and years without having an understanding of what's going on with their body and not being taken seriously. But that's it for a basic overview. The period is not a shameful thing. It is not dirty. It is as clean as any other blood coming out of your body. And so long as you are taking care of yourself, you're eating well, when you're in the shower, you're washing yourself, preferably with your bare hand, but if you can't handle that, a very soft cloth. You don't even have to use soap so long as you feel like you're getting it all out until after you're done, because unless you're using a very gentle soap, it can cause things to sting a bit. And take with you a little pencil case or something that you can put in a bag. Put your chosen blood control method, put some medication in there, put your favorite treat in there, and just be aware of yourself. Do what you can to take care of yourself during that time, and don't let anyone tell you that it's dirty. And if you have a dude try and be like, no, I'm cool about all this shit, and then he wigs out on you because you bled a little spot on the sheet and he's demanding the entire thing be replaced, drop him. Because maybe then he'll learn to respect the next person. So, I hope you all have a fantastic day today. Stay hydrated, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.